Hey there folks, got another snowblower unit for us today. This one is a hard starter. A little bit of background on it is this is my snowblower. Last winter it was having a hard time starting, so I cleaned and rebuilt the carburetor, and it continues to have a hard time starting. And I'm pretty sure I did okay on the carburetor part. So I went ahead and took a look at the spark in the ignition system, and also on my list, depending on what I find with the ignition system, is probably do a compression / cylinder leak down check and see if the compression system or the cylinder sealing is in need of some work. I do suspect that maybe the valves need some attention over the years. I haven't really done anything to it since I got it 10 or 11 years ago. So the first thing I wanted to do was to check for spark. So let's check for spark. And I will tell you, I already did this once before, which is why I decided to make a video out of it. And I want to use this as an opportunity to highlight the difference between the different types of spark testers. So let me go and set this one up. Got the spark enabled, the choke is off. The fuel is off. I'd rather the engine didn't start, but we'll see if we can capture the spark here, the spark tester. If I pull it over, hopefully you can see that that's sparking, and it's the light's flashing. Let me see if I can get you a better view here. So you'll see, with the spark tester, it appears to have spark. Now let me see if I can illustrate to you why I like this spark tester better. This spark tester has a very large gap to it, so that's going to stress the ignition system a little bit more. So let me hook it up to a bare spot on a cooling fin. I'm going to wiggle it, slide my clamp, make sure I've got a good ground here. Let me reposition you for a better view of that one. So you can see with this one, I get spark, but it's not nearly as consistent. So as you can see, we have spark, but it's not very good or consistent spark, at least not in the high demand situations. And so I'm thinking that, I bought this thing 10, 11 years ago, haven't really touched it as far as the ignition system goes or any of the maintenance. It's an old enough machine, being a 1978 model, that it's going to be a point style ignition system. And I haven't done anything with the points in the last 10, 11 years, so for the $20 it cost me for the parts, I'm going to go ahead and go in there with the idea of replacing them, because if I'm going to go through the effort of tearing the engine down, removing the flywheel to get to them, I may as well replace them while I'm in there, even if I do find that they're in pretty okay condition. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and get this engine ready to put it up and pull the flywheel and replace the ignition points on this older Tecumseh HS50. Alright, so now that we have some direction on the ignition system and we know we're going in there, let's get into it. First thing we got to do is put down these drip cutters so we can put it up. So let me reposition you here. And we're just going to remove the body bolt. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and work on taking off all the covers so that we can get everything exposed here. Start with the starter switch. that dangle. Carb cover. Choke knob. We're going to be 7/16, I believe. Yep. Gotta remove the starter as well. Or at least loosen it up so the shroud can slide past it. Alright, so I got the starter hanging loose on the other side, and then last thing we need to do is these 3.5 inches up here. A little bit of fuel from the carb. Loosen up this one since it's pinching on this corner here. There we go. And we'll take that primer hose off too. You can get it off without ripping it. There we are. And next thing we need to do, figure out the size flywheel nut socket we need. And that happens to be 3/4 inch. And we'll need an impact extension for that. We need to figure out what size flywheel knockoff we need here. Yeah, look at that, lucky guess. I'll come up underneath here. I'm going to just try to give it a quick shot to crack it free. So we've got the inside of our flywheel here. First thing I like to do with these older ones here is make sure the magnets are still intact. Alright, and so now here you can see this is the flywheel key, and then this is my points assembly, the ignition coil, the wires, this is the condenser right here. So now we need to get into this a little bit. Let me see if I can position you guys for a better view. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to take a pliers and I'm going to pull out the key. Keep that off to the side. While I've got it out, I want to look and make sure that there's no shearing or anything happening. I think it looks in pretty okay shape. We should be able to reuse that. And then I want to pop the spring clip off the side here. See if I can get around this somehow. There we go. And then I can lift my cover up. Gasket cover. I'm going to want my flywheel nut so I can more easily turn the crankshaft here, so I'm going to put that on. And we're going to want to set our engine to top dead center of the compression stroke, where our point gap is largest, or should be largest, and then we'll go through taking it off. I think I might even try to slide the coil off of the core and make sure there's no rust in between the core and the coil. I found that a couple of times, and I believe that could also reduce the intensity of the spark. While we're in here, there's 2 bolts that we want to make sure that we do not disturb, which is this one right here and this one right here, the 2 bolts that hold the whole ignition assembly to the engine. We want to make sure we leave those alone, okay? Because if I take this off, that's going to change the whole timing of the engine, and that's a little bit more involved in resetting. So I want to leave these alone if at all possible. But we'll change out the points over here, and we'll change out the condenser over here, and we'll try to get you as good a viewpoints as we can while we do it. Well, alright, let's see if we can start off by doing a couple of checks and measurements here. The inside of the points box looks really clean and nice, which is awesome. But let's go ahead and see if we can disconnect the leads, and we'll do a basic continuity measurement first to make sure the points are actually opening and closing before we take them apart and disturb them here. So I've got a meter. I'm going to see if we can get this set up so that you guys can see the points and the meter all at the same time. And I can also get my arms and hands in there to do what needs to be done. Okay, so first things first, I need to disconnect the primary lead from the points here. This nut is 11/32. It shouldn't be that tight. We'll want to spin this off here. Go ahead, this is our stop switch lead here. This is our points. And so you can see here, the OEM version of this, there'd be 2 wires going into this, 1 on each side. This only has 1 left. And so that tells me that these have been replaced once before. Not by me though. So we'll disconnect the leads for the condenser and the coil. Let those sit off of there. We're going to turn our meter onto ohms and check our leads here, make sure that we have good leads. 0.28, it's pretty decent. And so we're going to put 1 lead on there, on the terminal for the movable point. And then we're going to put another one on good engine ground, which I will clip right to the side of the points box there. And you can see we have a 0.38. And so we have continuity right now, which tells us that the points are closed. And the high point to the ramp is right there. And so as I rotate this, my meter should go from showing continuity to showing open or infinite resistance. Right about there. Okay. The gurgling you heard, that would be the air leaking out of the spark plug threads. Off camera, I did loosen the spark plug threads so that it would be easier to rotate the engine over. And if you guys can see this well enough, I just stopped right here just as the point started to open. I'm coming up on the high point right here, which is the point I would use to make or set my point gap here. And so while I'm here, I'm going to take my points feeler gauge. I'm going to try to, and I got my 20 thousandths blade, and I'm going to check my gap here. You can see it slid right in here. And with the blade in place, you can see I have continuity. And if I pull it back up and out, now we have out of limits. And so my point gap is pretty close to what it should be. Pretty snug 20. And At this point now, I guess we'll go ahead and we'll pull the points in the condenser out. I'll take my meter out of the way for now. And then we'll see if we can get that coil off to make sure that the connection between the coil and the core is clean as well. There's a little clip on the back side here that we got to pop off. But to get the points out, we have to loosen the mounting screw right here by my fingertip. Let me see if I can zoom you in a little bit further. Okay, so I got that screw right there. I'll go ahead and loosen this. You see that okay? And with that loose, all my settings are lost. Take a pair of pliers. Whoop, there they go. Popped up out. Maybe you can see the points here. And the other half right here. Got some wear and some pitting. So with that out of the way, now we've got a 1/4 inch nut driver for the condenser here. So there's the condenser. Move that bolt in there. Might have to set you guys up in a different angle so you can see this clip come off. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this clip right here holding the coil on. With some sort of a device we got to get in here. Get behind that clip. Oh, there you go. Pop it off. And try not to lose it because we're going to need to put that back on. This one falls out. Some of the other ones, the clip doesn't necessarily fall out quite so much. There's that clip. Don't lose it. It's a bit of a pain to get back in, but definitely doable. Now with that off, I should be able to very carefully wiggle out my coil. I may have to loosen up this bracket back here to relieve or produce some slack in the high tension lead or the spark plug wire. See if I can do that. So now I should push that off. So this is going to come off. Okay. And yeah, you can see. No, you can't see. All right, well, let me see if I can pick you up and show you. You can see here, this is the part of the core here. We can see we got some rust and oxidation happening here. And on the sides of the core as well, there is a connection on the internal part of the coil there that does make contact with the core, so we want to clean that up and make sure that that has a good electrical connection before we put it back together. Okay, confession time. This one doesn't actually have one of those metal strips in the center of the core like I was anticipating and like I've seen on some other Tecumsehs. So this one, it's got, you can kind of see that rib in the bottom of the square hole there that the light's hitting. This one is plastic, and so that one just keeps it tightly mounted to the core. Other versions of these coils, those are metal, and I've encountered where they've rusted and increased the resistance of the secondary. And taking this off, cleaning them, putting them back together has reduced and brought the resistance of the secondary winding back into or close to spec. This coil doesn't seem to have that particular feature, so I've just taken the coil off for no reason. However, if you ever need to replace a coil on one of these older Tecumseh points ignitions, that's how you do it. So let's go ahead and put the coil back together, and then we will proceed with the condenser and points installation. So to put this back on, I'm going to go ahead and line it back up, making sure not to bend my laminations. Gotta peek around and see the back side here. Okay. So I'm going to push this back on here. We got to pull that back out. So that slid back on, and now we got to go ahead and get this little clip in. And I'm going to try to put it in from the side here. Hopefully you can see this come in here. Yeah. The little tab facing up right here has got a little hole that I've got to find and engage. So once I've got the hole located, hold that in place. I'm going to leave the pliers there. The weight of the handle, hold that in place while I find myself a screwdriver. Whoa. There we go. That's installed. And now we will set you up for the points and condenser.